Okay, it's finally that time of year. I needed a coffee for this because this is gonna take forever. Hi, welcome back to my channel. It has been 365 days, maybe 366, because I think I filmed this on the 1st of the month last year, and it is now January 2nd. But alas, we are going to go over every single thing that I read in 2021. I read 57 books. My goal was 50 books. Yeah, at the end of November, I reached 50 books. So I was like, sweet. So everything else was icing on top of the cake. I had some really good books this year. We had some really not good books this year, and we are going to talk about every single one of them. So tuck in. This is going to be a long video. If you watch the entire thing, thank you so much. If you have opinions, let me know. I love to chat about books. If you know me, then you know. But yeah, that's it. Let's get started. Alright, so I tried to plan and be proactive this year, so it was maybe not as like disorganized and chaotic as it was last year. So I have my laptop here, and I have made a master list of everything. You can't even see it, but I have made a master list of everything that I read, my rating, a brief synopsis, and a brief like just talk about how I felt about the book. So this is going to be helpful, and we're just gonna see how it goes. Okay, so very first book that I read in 2021 was In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. So this is a memoir about her experiences in a same-sex abusive relationship. This is a very different and inventive style in telling this like story. It's a memoir, so it is a story, but like it's not really a story, you know? So it uses a series of narrative tropes, including classic horror, which is a totally unique way to write a memoir. I've never read anything like this before. I generally like reading memoirs because I get a good insight into how the person was feeling when these events or whatever happened in their life, and I feel like because of the way this book was written, I didn't entirely get that. It was written in second person present tense, and for a memoir I just found that difficult to really grasp those emotions and feel that. Overall, I think it was a good memoir. The format was definitely different and interesting, but I don't know, it just didn't hit me the way that I was expecting it to hit me. Oh my god, I'm sweating. Why is it so hot in here? And my forehead's itchy. Okay, relax. It's been one book. Okay, the next book that I have I actually got from the library, so I don't have it with me here. And that book was Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Balikaur Jaswal. I gave that book a 5 out of 5. I absolutely loved it. I had pretty much no expectations when I went into reading it, and I ended up loving it. It was fantastic. So it is, I'm gonna keep looking down because I have everything like specifically written out here so I can give a good synopsis. So if I'm not looking up, then just let me live my life. Okay, so it's about our main character, Nikki. She works at a local pub. She's the daughter of Indian immigrant parents. They're living in London. So when her family is strapped for cash, she ends up taking a job at a local community center to teach creative writing. So the proper Sikh widows that she is teaching creative writing to thought they were going just to learn basic like English literacy. One of them ends up finding a book of like sexy stories and brings it to class, and everything kind of spirals from there. So seeing how the women react, Nikki's eager to liberate them and get them to tell their stories and all their greatest, you know, like fantasies and memories, and like all of these great stories come to light, and they have these overactive imaginations that are just fantastic. They do have to keep their secrets from the Brotherhood. It's like a group of very conservative Punjabi men who have decided to kind of be like the word of reason in the community. So obviously these like widows writing erotic stories is not ideal for them, so they have to hide that from them. The group obviously gossips, and when they're gossiping it brings light to a death of a young girl that happened in their community. So I love this book. It was great. It kind of had a little bit of everything. There was a perfect balance of community, friendship, steaminess. I thought it was amazing, as I've said. There's a little bit of mystery. I think that everyone should read this book. It was so much fun. I couldn't put it down. 5 stars for Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. Okay, the next book that I read, I actually listened to the audiobook, and that was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't know why I paused so long when I said that. So this is a novel about the whirlwind rise and fall of a 1970s rock group and their lead singer, and it's told like interview style, kind of revealing their iconic breakup and what happened with them. I listened to the audiobook for this. It's an entire cast of characters because it's told like interview style, which was really, really cool. The audiobook was fantastic. Highly recommend that method if you plan on reading this book because it was like just super immersive. I really liked it. 4 out of 5 stars for Daisy Jones and the Six. I thought it was excellent. Okay, so the next book that I read was Lore by Alexandra Bracken, and okay, I'm gonna read from my laptop from this one because I have a pretty big like synopsis here, and I just want to do the book's justice, you know? Every 7 years the Agon begins. As punishment for a past rebellion, 9 Greek gods are forced to walk the earth as mortals, and they are hunted by descendants of their ancient bloodlines, who are all eager to kill one of the gods so they can seize their power and their immortality. Okay, so we follow our main character, Lore, who has fled that brutal life after the sadistic murder of her family by a rival bloodline, and she's pushed her thoughts of revenge against the man who is now a god responsible for their deaths. So as the hunt dawns over New York City, 2 participants seek Lore's help, a childhood friend who she thought was dead, and Athena, who is one of the last original gods who's actually severely injured. So Lore ends up binding her fate to Athena's in order to help try and stop the rise of a new god who wants to take over humanity. This book was like the Hunger Games, but set in modern times, like in New York City plus Greek mythology, if that makes sense. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This was super fun for like a YA kind of fantasy novel. I really enjoyed it. This one is the exclusive Owl Crate edition. That's why the cover's black. The original cover is white. Yeah, 4 stars for Lore. I thought it was great. I do think this is going to be a series, but this is just the first one. Okay, so the next book that I read was Atomic Habits by James Clear. I actually listened to this one on audiobook as well. I don't really know why I decided to listen to this because I personally don't read a lot of like self-help well-being type novels. So I don't really know why I had the urge to read this. Maybe just because it's pretty popular and I kept seeing it everywhere. Yes, so Atomic Habits is just all about tiny changes that can make a big impact in your life and how even changing the smallest of things can, you know, have great effects. Great A+ if you're the kind of person that books and stuff like that really impact you and you can really change your life from that. I am just not that kind of person. Not saying they can't be helpful, and like there was some ideas and themes in it that I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, but ultimately did I implement any of them? No. Like I don't know. That kind of stuff just isn't for me, and I would much rather spend my time reading a story where I can like kind of escape. Like I use reading as an escape to kind of take my head out of my life, not so much to like, okay, life, we need to be in life, everything we can do to better life and improve life. That sounds kind of like pessimistic and terrible, but I would much rather spend my time reading like about a crazy fantasy world than things I can do to make better habits, you know? Does that make me like a terrible person? I don't know. Anyways, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars because it was still fine. Like it was good, I guess. Like I said, if books like that and things like that are very impactful for you, then I think this could be beneficial, but personally for me, they're just not. Okay, so the next book that I read was The Death of Vivek Oji. This book made me sob. I was definitely crying in the club when I was finished this book. So this book is about a mother who opens her door and finds her son wrapped in a colorful cloth on her doorstep, and he is unfortunately dead. So the story follows Vivek, who was raised by a distant father and an understanding but overbearing mother. So Vivek suffers blackouts and moments of disconnection between self and surroundings, and adolescence kind of gives way to adulthood, and the mystery gives way to a heart-wrenching act of violence. So this story is all about loss and transcendence, and it left me in tears. I was not okay when I finished this book. Like I think I remember my Goodreads, all it said in my review was ow, my heart, because that's really how I felt when I finished this book. It was beautiful. I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend, especially if you want like a little tearjerker. That'll definitely give it to you. Bro, I am sweating. Okay, the next book that I read was Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. Now, if you know me, you know that Get a Life, Chloe Brown, the first one in the Brown Sisters, is one of my favorite books. I love her so much. So this is Dani Brown, who's another one of the Brown sisters. It's a friends to lover romance versus Get a Life Chloe Brown is enemies to lovers. The love interest Zaf rescues Dani from a workplace fire drill gone wrong, and like they are friends in the workplace. Anyways, he rescues her. He's an ex-rugby player, and a video of him rescuing her kind of goes viral, and it is good publicity for him. And she's like, well, I just kind of want friends with benefits, so if you're down with that. And he's like, okay, but we need to have a fake relationship, and like in public, and then in private, like we can do whatever you want. So they're like, okay, great. Obviously, you know, it's a romance novel, so are they gonna stay just friends with benefits? Are feelings gonna happen? We don't know. Read it and find out. I thought this was super fun. I did give it a 3 out of 5 stars just because, and I think this is just a personal reason. One of the main characters really reminded me of somebody that I know, and that was weird for me. So that was like all I could picture when I was reading this, so that really threw me off. Like that has nothing to do with the story or like the book itself. I think it's great, but just personally, 3 stars. I probably wouldn't read it again. I would recommend it to somebody, but I probably would not read it again just for personal reasons. Alright, next up I read Becoming by Michelle Obama. This was incredible. I love memoirs, and I didn't really know a whole lot about Michelle Obama besides kind of like the basic stuff. So in the memoir we kind of step into her world, chronicling her experiences from her childhood growing up in south side of Chicago all the way to her being the first lady and beyond that. I was a little nervous when I started reading this because it's pretty long and it's like pretty dense. I thought it was going to be very political and a lot about her time in the White House as the first lady, but it really wasn't. Like, obviously that was a big part of her life, so we do get that in the book, but it more so talks about her like before that and growing up and everything that she accomplished and like when she met Barack. And I just thought it was great, and there was so much like insight that you obviously would not know. This was 5 out of 5 stars for me. Highly recommend this memoir. I thought it was great. Okay, this next book, she was also 5 out of 5 stars, and I don't shut up about this book because I love it so much. I need to reread it this year, and that is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. If you don't know about Legendborn, then you really need to get out of the rock that you're living under, because this book is fantastic. So after her mother dies in an accident, our main character Bree wants nothing to do with her family memory, like her family home or like childhood memories, nothing like that. Like she's just over it, doesn't want anything to do with it. It just hurts too bad. So she goes to a boarding school for bright high schoolers, and then on her first night there she witnesses a magical attack. So then the Merlin, Selwyn, who we all know and love, he goes to wipe her memory, but it actually ends up unlocking her own magic within her, which brings to light a memory that she had from when her mother was like in the hospital dying, and she now believes that magic was involved in her mother's death. So she's kind of doing whatever it takes to figure out what happened to her mom, even if that means initiating herself into the Legendborn Society. So that's why Nick is helping her, because he's a legacy. So together they're trying to figure out like how to bring down the Legendborn or figure out what happened to her mom, all the while this magical war is kind of starting in the background. This is based on Arthurian legend, which I thought was super cool. The magic system is really, really cool. I cannot wait for the second book to come out. Hopefully we get a little bit more of Selwyn in the second book, because you guys, unpopular opinion, but I am team Nick. Like, I love Nick. I think that he was like supreme. Selwyn obviously was great, but I just didn't get enough of him, so I hope in the second book that there is more of his character in it, because I just need to know more. But yes, 5 out of 5 stars for Legendborn. Everybody freaking read this. Okay, the next book that I read was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This one I also listened to on audiobook, and honestly I don't remember that much about it. I gave it a 3-star in my little blurb that I wrote here. It's about a girl who finds out the identity of her birth parents and discovers she's the sole inheritor to their abandoned mansion. I remember it was like a thriller mystery, but it really wasn't that thrilling or mysterious from what I remember. I had pretty big expectations because I saw this book around a lot and it was really popular, and Lisa Jewell's really popular, but it was just kind of so-so for me, which is why I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was just smack dab in the middle. Honestly, I probably could have given it a lower rating because now I don't remember anything about it, but anywho. Okay, the next book that I read, and also the longest book that I read this year, was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas. Obviously I read this, it's the new one that came out. I keep saying this year, but it's not 2020 anymore, but anyways. It's the newest one that came out in 2021. Okay, my problem with this book is it's too freaking long for no reason. Like, this book is almost 800 pages for no reason. I don't think that it needed to be at all. So this one is told in Nesta's point of view, which I did think was really cool, and I did like getting like her point of view in it. So I did enjoy it in that aspect, and I enjoyed seeing her kind of heal in her own way and do what she needed to do to come to terms with her life and everything. Farah and Rhys, I could not stand in this book. So annoying. I literally hated them in this book. Like, I wanted nothing to do with them, which is hilarious because in the other books I was like, I want everything to do with them, I need to know everything, but this one I was just so over them. Somebody did bring to my attention that since it's told in Nesta's point of view and Nesta also doesn't like them, maybe that's why they were so annoying, which yes, that is a possibility, but I think they are just big dumb idiots. And my other problem with this book is the main sort of plot point, like the main climax, the whole thing that the book is leading up to, I was really excited about because I thought it was going to be like this great moment, and it was, but it lasted for like maybe 2 paragraphs. Like, it was just done. So I was like, why is this book 800 pages if the main plot point is going to be over in like 2 seconds? I did give this 4 to 5 stars though. All the Sarah J Maas books that I've read have been highly entertaining. The pacing is pretty good. Besides this one being hefty, I still flew through it. So yeah, 4 to 5 stars for Court of Silver Flames. The next book that I read was a reread for me, and that is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. Again, if you know me, you know this is my favorite book. I usually read this every year, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it, but it is about our main character, Ed Kennedy, who he's a cab driver, hopelessly in love with his best friend, doesn't really think he has anything going in his life, and then one day he inadvertently stops a bank robbery, and then that's when the first ace arrives in the mail. So he gets 4 aces, and they all have like addresses or clues or something that he has to decipher and figure out what he has to do. So he's kind of chosen to care, and this is a book about how small acts of kindness can really change a person's life, and I just adore this book. Like, this is like a comfort read for me. It's like coming home. I will read this book probably every year until the day that I die. Okay, so the next book that I read, I was obsessed with, and that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This book's incredible. The duology is incredible. I loved both of them. I read both of them this year, but I read this one first. Obviously, I read this one first. So this is about Victor and Eli. They are college roommates. They're both brilliant, very arrogant, and they kind of recognize that in each other. So in their senior year, a shared research project on adrenaline and near-death experiences and how it can kind of alter a person to give them seemingly supernatural abilities. Their motives go from academic to experimental, and things kind of go terribly wrong. This is called The Villains Duology for a reason. This is not like a story about good guys. They're both bad guys who kind of think that they're the good guys, which was really cool, and I had never read anything sort of from the villain's perspective before, so I absolutely loved this. 5 out of 5 stars for me. The writing was beautiful, it was sharp, it was witty, it was dark. Like, I can't say enough good things about it. Everybody should read the Villains Duology because it's fantastic, and V.E. Schwab is slowly becoming one of my favorite authors, I will say that. Okay, so the next book that I read was The Rhythm Section by Mark Burnell. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, so I actually started this last year, like in 2020, and then DNF'd it because I just was like, this is so boring and I don't want to read it. So I honestly don't know why I picked it up again this year. Maybe I was just trying to tie up loose ends. It's a spy thriller. I don't think a spy thriller is for me. I think that's why I didn't like it. I wanted to watch the movie, which is why I wanted to read this book because, you know, I like to read the book first, usually. I remember liking the ending, but other than that, it was just like, I mean, it was just like a spy thriller. Like, she's a spy, she's out for revenge, she's killing people, she's doing things. And I just, you know, could have done without it. It was okay. The next book is another one that has become one of my favorites, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Excuse this stupid sticker, I can't get it off. Again, we're reading off the laptop. This book is about a girl named Alex. She is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. She was raised in Los Angeles by her hippie mom. Alex dropped out of high school early and into into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, much worse, and then by the age of 20 she's the sole survivor in a multiple homicide. So at her hospital bed, Alex is offered a second chance to attend the world's most elite universities on a full ride scholarship. Like, girl is going to Yale. She still wants answers on why, so she gets to Yale and she's tasked with overseeing these mysterious secret societies on campus. So seemingly innocent on the outside, their occult activities are revealed, and they are definitely more sinister than you can imagine. And Alex can also see ghosts, which is super fun and cool. This is like a really dark academia. I absolutely loved this book, and I didn't really have expectations for it when I picked it up. I picked it up because I was just like, oh, it's on my shelf, like I need something else to read, so I'll just try this. And it was 5 out of 5 stars for me. I absolutely loved it. Definitely check the trigger warnings before you read it, because there are a couple scenes in this that could be triggering to some people and might be hard to read, so just make sure you read the trigger warnings before you pick this one up. But I thought it was great. 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. And it's like, it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, I will say that. It is different and kind of twisted and dark, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. Okay, so the next book that I read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Another super hyped book, and I mean, I feel like the hype is worth it. It was really good. So this is a Greek retelling of Achilles and Patroclus's love story, and it goes through the timeline of how they met when they were boys to how they grew up and their love blossom, and ultimately we all know the story of Achilles and ultimately Achilles' death. And this book definitely made me cry. The writing was beautiful, and I definitely shed a few tears reading this one. But yeah, 3.5 stars was my rating for Song of Achilles. Okay, so next up I read Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. It's his memoir. I loved it. 4 out of 5 stars. It was super fun. I am a huge Matthew McConaughey fan, so I really liked his memoir, and listening to it on audiobook was great because he actually reads it himself. I really enjoyed the part when he talked about meeting his wife. I thought that was great. I'm a sucker for like a good meet cute, a good love story, so I really liked that. And when he was talking about his acting career and just like when he stopped taking on romantic comedy roles because he wanted to heighten his acting career, like he just stopped accepting those roles, which I thought was really cool. It was a great memoir. 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend the audiobook. Okay, the next book that I read was The Institute by Stephen King, which I actually enjoyed. I read my first Stephen King book last year, which was The Outsider, and I did not like that one. So I was kind of like, I don't really know, but one of my friends recommended The Institute, so I was like, okay, I'll try it, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. In the middle of the night in a house on a quiet street in suburban Minneapolis, intruders silently murder Luke Ellis's parents, and they load him into the back of an SUV. So Luke wakes up in the Institute in a room that looks exactly like his, except there's no window. And outside his door are other doors to other rooms of other kids with special talents, so they're telekinetic and they have telepathy. And right now they're all in front half, but they realize that some of the kids graduate to back half, but then they are never seen again, so the kids are kind of like, what's going on? I really liked this for the fact that it was told majority in the kids' perspective, and I thought that was really cool. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It gave me a little bit more hope in Stephen King, which came crashing down for the rest of the year when I read more Stephen King. But besides the point, yeah, so I really liked The Institute. I thought it was great. Alright, next up was another YA fantasy. Oh my god, I almost dropped my laptop. Next up was another YA fantasy, and that is Everlist by Sarah Holland. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was just like a fun YA fantasy. The kind of magic system in it is really cool. In the kingdom of Sempira, time is literally money. It gets extracted from your blood and then turned into iron, which then is turned into gold. But every time blood is extracted to become money, it takes time off of your lifespan. So the rich tax the poor, like to the hilt. And then our main character, her father falls really ill, so she knows that she has to go to the Girling's estate, who's like this rich family, where her and her father actually used to live, but then this terrible accident happened, so they were forced to flee. So now she has to go back to make more money to help her sick father, and when she's there she just discovers things about from when she was there in the past, and all these things come to light, and it's a lot more dangerous and a lot more tempting than Jules, the main character, thought it was going to be. The plot was super fun, the mystery in it was good, it kind of kept me guessing until the end. I do want to read the second book, I just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, it was good, just little like YA fantasy, 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, the next book that I read was The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Voracek. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. This is a story of Angrboda, who is a witch that survived a burning by the Norse gods and hides in a remote forest. So her attempts to be alone are ruined by a loyal huntress and by Loki, actually, who help her kind of start a new life, and then her and Loki fall in love. Soon start a family, but Angrboda is haunted by visions of Ragnarok and how her children will have a big role in the demise of the gods. So she's trying to protect them at any cost, but is she strong enough to kind of go up against Odin is the question. I really liked this. I thought it was an awesome retelling. It was super fun. I listened to the audiobook and I really liked it. It was super immersive. Again, this is another one that I didn't really have expectations for, hadn't really heard anything about. So going into it, I was just kind of like meh, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The next book I also listened to on audiobook was Meet Cute, just by various authors. It's a collection of short stories. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. As the name suggests, it was so cute. Yeah, it's just a bunch of short stories about meet cute situations, and it was just like a very good kind of like feel good book, and I really liked it. I do want to get a physical copy because I really liked it. Okay, the next one that I read, I actually read on my Kindle because the ebook was way cheaper, and that was The One by John Mars. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Holy crap, this book was good. So this book's about a DNA test. That's all it takes to find your perfect match. So people do these DNA tests, send in their DNA because they found the gene that matches you with your perfect match. We follow 5 different narratives, which seems like a lot, and it is. 5 different narratives of people who have all been paired with their perfect match, but there is like a cliffhanger to every single person. Literally every chapter is a cliffhanger because you're reading about one situation and then the chapter ends and you're like, oh, okay, I can't wait to find out what happens next, and then it will switch you to another narrative. So you're left like, oh my god, what's going on? It was super fast paced. I really liked it. It was a great thriller, very exciting. Yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Okay, the next book that I read was also a collection of short stories, and that was The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Philia. 4 out of 5 stars. It's a short story collection focusing on Black women and their inner and outer lives. I had been seeing this everywhere, so I was like, okay, I need to read it, and it did not disappoint. I really liked it. It was a great collection of short stories. My favorites were Peach Cobbler and How to Make Love to a Physicist. Okay. The next book, Cassandra, this is your fault. If you're watching this, Cassandra, this is your fault. So the next book that I read was, The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty by Anne Rice. Yeah. So this is a disturbing Sleeping Beauty retelling. Whereas instead of like Sleeping Beauty getting woken up and falling in love with the prince and happily ever after, she gets woken up by the prince and becomes his slave, but like slave, you know? And the entire book is very explicit and very yeah, I did not have a good time when I was reading this book. I'm angry because I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars because ultimately at the very end, because there's 3, at the very end I was like, oh, now I need to know what happens. That's not good. So yeah, I don't really recommend this book. I will probably read the rest of the series just because I can't help it, but it was disturbing. Okay, the next book that I read was also another short story, and that was The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. So it's about a con woman who is reading palms when a lady walks in and asks her for help figuring out what's going on in her Victorian home. So it's like a haunted house, there's a creepy kid, and they're trying to kind of rid themselves of this evil. It was small, it was a short story, so it was little, but it packed a punch. Like, I remember wanting there to be a lot more to the story. I feel like this could have been an entire book, but but I mean, it's a short story, so I guess that's like what it's for. It wants you to be wanting more. Yeah, it's definitely going to leave you with a lot of questions in the end if you do read it. I thought it was great. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. All right, the next book is also another book that I didn't really like this year. Cheat Day by Liv Stratman. I give this a 2 out of 5 stars. It's a story about a woman who married her college sweetheart, and while David is successful and like has a successful career, Kit, who is our main character, she keeps quitting her job only to go back to it after she gives up on what she's quit her job for. She's a serial dieter, which she never follows through with, and then Kit soon falls into an affair with a contractor who's she works at her family's bakery, or her sister's bakery rather. She falls into an affair with him, and okay, so really she just wanted her cake and to eat it too. That's like what I got from this. And the affair, it was just so surface level. Like, we didn't really get anything from Max, like no character development from him, no development within the affair. Like, it was just nothing. And all the while she's doing this affair, she's on this like crash diet that she's following through with. So I don't know, the whole thing was just a mess, and I just didn't really like it. And then in the end, she doesn't even tell her husband about the affair. Like, that's where you think it's leading up to, and then in the end she's just like, meh, affair's over, we're happy now, we're gonna go to Italy with his family. Like, no bitch, not okay. This was not for me. I did not like this. Next book that I read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I just don't think I'm a Stephen King gal. I did like The Institute, but I don't think I'm a Stephen King gal. I did not think this was that scary. I thought it was super predictable. Maybe in its time it was really good and scary, but for me, I could have done without. I don't know. If you're a Stephen King stan, I'm really sorry. I don't know. It's just not for me. Not for me. Next book that I read, I actually don't have it here. It was a collection of poetry. I read Clarity and Connection by Young Pablo, I think is how you say his name. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I actually read and annotated that book for one of my best friends for her birthday. It's just all about like connection and growing, and kind of letting go of the past and connection with yourself. I thought it was really great. I read through it and I gave it as a gift, and I thought it was a really good gift, and she liked it, so yay. Okay, next one that I read is another one of my favorites for the year, and that is Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. This is one of my favorite books that I have read this year, if not ever. I absolutely loved it. So it's about our main character, Nina, who is in her early 30s. She's a successful food writer and has a loyal online following, but her life seems like it's falling apart to her. She's struggling with being single. She hasn't dated since she's been in her last like long-term relationship. So she decides that she's going to start dating really the only way that she knows how in this day and age, by downloading a dating app. So she does that, meets this guy named Max. He seems great. Everything's awesome. Everything's great. And ultimately he ends up ghosting her, which leaves her with the question that so many of us have when we're dating nowadays and get ghosted. Why? Like, no explanation, no nothing, everything was great, and then just radio silence. She's kind of coming to terms with that, and this sort of narrative and like stereotype that women who are in their late 20s, early 30s need to move to the suburbs and get married and have kids and all of these things that she doesn't have, so she feels like she's a failure. One of her best friends has it and kind of rubs it in her face any chance that she gets, so she's dealing with friendship changes, relationship changes, changes within herself. This book's incredibly relatable, especially if you're in like that kind of late 20s, even if you're not in your late 20s, but if you're just kind of like dating and navigating through that, and like getting ghosted fucking sucks, and like dealing with that, and you know, like I can't say enough good things about it. I think everyone should read Ghosts. One of my favorite books of the year. Okay, the next book that I read, don't fight me on this because I didn't really like it. This was a trend. Last year, in 2020, I read so many books that I loved. This year, I actually read quite a few that I didn't like. So I read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I don't know what it is. I didn't really like this book. I gave it 3 stars, mostly because of the pacing, because I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning to finish this book, so you would think that would mean that I really liked it, but no. Sometimes it's the one who loves you who hurts you the most. Girl meets boy, girl falls for boy. Girl can't stop thinking about her first love. First love shows up, relationship takes a turn for the worst. That's what I wrote. This book, I don't know. It just wasn't for me. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting take on romance and like domestic violence, so trigger warning for that if you're going to read this book. Yeah, just wasn't really for me. The next book that I read, I really liked, and that was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So this is about a maiden, Poppy, who was chosen from birth to usher in a new era. So she's waiting for the ascension in the entire kingdom. The future is resting on her shoulders, but that's not a future she wants for herself. She'd rather be out there like fighting the evil that's trying to overtake the kingdom. So then when Hawke, who we love, a golden-eyed, beautiful, delicious man, he is assigned to be one of her new guards, comes in, and he kind of makes her question everything, and everything changes. So all the while, a fallen kingdom is rising again, and they're determined to take back what they believe was theirs. So this was an awesome fantasy book. I loved it. I can't wait to finish the series. I read the second book this year, which we'll get to when we get to it. Did take me a while to get through because she's pretty thick. And I did find it dragging a little bit, but nonetheless, I thought it was awesome. 4 to 5 stars. The next book that I read was Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. Not for me. So I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. So this book's about Misha and Ryan, who get set up as pen pals in the 5th grade. They've been in contact for 7 years, and then they have 3 rules: no social media, no pictures, and no phone numbers, because they just want to keep it strictly pen pals. So then when Misha comes across a picture of a girl online whose name is Ryan and has all of these same things in common as the Ryan that he knows, he ends up enrolling in the school that she goes to, but then when he meets her, she's a totally different person than who he thought he knew. So he pretends to be somebody else, and they kind of end up becoming enemies, which fine, but this isn't an adult romance, and I don't want to read about 17-year-old kids doing adult romance things. I just don't want to read that. I just don't really want to, you know? I don't really want to. And Misha's supposed to be like a bad boy, but he's really just like a manipulative bully, and I don't like that. We don't like that at all. And Ryan is just really a big, dumb, self-centered airhead. So I don't know. Didn't like these characters. The pacing was good, but that was about it. This was definitely one I picked up because of the hype, and just don't read it. Just don't read it. Okay, the next one, another favorite of the year, The Atlas Six, My Child, My Baby. This book. Okay. So this was a 5-star read for me. Of course, it was amazing. I was literally not in this world when I was reading this book. I was transported. So the 6 most talented magicians are selected to be the latest candidates who are recruited by the mysterious Atlas Blakely to join the Alexandrian Society, which is a society that's tasked with protecting the Library of Alexandria, because in this world, the Library of Alexandria still exists. So they're told they have 1 year to qualify for initiation into the society, and they're going to be tested on things like time and space, luck and thought, and life and death. 5 will be initiated, 1 will be eliminated. That's like the premise of the book. When I tell you I could not put this down, I could not put this down. The easiest 5 out of 5 that I've ever given. This was incredible. This is one that is definitely worth the hype online, I think. I think it was great. Next book was also a 5 out of 5 stars, and that was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, about 4 famous siblings to legendary musician Mick Riva. The premise of it is that they throw an epic party to celebrate the end of the summer, but by midnight the Riva mansion is going to be up in flames. So it's 2 alternating timelines of kind of how the family came to be, of like Mick and the kid's mom when they met and him kind of rising to fame, and then the kids in where they're at now, if that makes sense. I thought this was great. It's a perfect summer read. I felt like I was on the beach in Malibu when I was reading it. I read through it in one sitting, absolutely loved it. Definitely one that I will read probably every summer. The next book that I read was another memoir, and that is Surviving the White Gaze by Rebecca Carroll. So this is a memoir from a Black cultural critic, Rebecca Carroll, recounting her painful struggle to overcome a completely white childhood in order to forge her identity as a Black woman. Yeah, so it was honestly a stunning memoir. I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It left me speechless at a couple moments, I will say. This came highly recommended to me by a few of my coworkers, and it did not disappoint. 4 out of 5 stars for Surviving the White Gaze. Okay, next book that I read was Pretty Little Wife by Darby Kane. This is a domestic thriller. So a student vanishes months ago, and now Lila, the main character, her husband is missing. And at first they kind of treated it as a coincidence, until it's discovered that the student's disappearance is the 3rd unexplained disappearance in the last couple of years. So everyone's kind of in an uproar that now Lila's husband, who's who's like a prominent high school teacher, that he's missing. Everyone's kind of up in arms about it except for Lila, because she is the last person to have seen his body, except now it's missing. So yeah, this was definitely a gripping thriller. It sucks you right in from the very beginning. The ending was great. The twist was awesome. If you want a thriller that's just gonna like entice you, this is definitely a good one. Oh my gosh, we're down to the last step. Okay, we are cruising. The next book that I read was Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. Listen, nothing is ever going to compare to Sharp Objects, okay? That is her best book in my opinion. Nothing's going to compare, but now I have read all of Gillian Flynn's books, and Sharp Objects reigns supreme, okay? But this is about our main character Libby. So when she was 7, her mother and her 2 sisters were murdered, and she's the only one that survived. They were murdered in it, they called it the Satan Sacrifice of Kinnicky, Kansas. She survived and testified against her brother, who went to jail for the murder of her mother and sisters. 25 years later, a secret society called the Kill Club, who's obsessed with like true crime cases, comes forward and tries to get Libby to recount that night so she can testify or try to provide some evidence saying that Ben is innocent, because they don't believe that Ben actually did it. So there's no denying that Gillian Flynn is a good storyteller, because it was a good story. I just didn't like it as much as I thought that I was going to. I hate to compare, but just comparing books by the same author, Sharp Objects was just so good. Like this one I felt was pretty predictable when it kind of got down to it, which is why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Like, I wouldn't not recommend it, but I also wouldn't be my first choice of Gillian Flynn books to recommend. The next book that I read, I don't actually have it here with me, was Dear Evan Hansen, because I really wanted to see the movie that was coming up. I had never seen the Broadway musical, but Dear Evan Hansen, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. A senior in high school, so a letter that was meant only for himself gets out, and the letter kind of pulls him into a family's grief over their son, who unfortunately took his own life. And it's just this big, bad, not good situation. I really wanted to like this book a lot more than I did, but I think missing that musical element really impacted the story. Like I thought that it was gonna crush me, but it just didn't. But I think it was because it was lacking that musical aspect. Next book that I read was, oh my god, my laptop literally almost just went flying. Next book that I read was House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This was a freaking phenomenal YA thriller, horror, fantasy. I thought it was great. Hollow Sisters, it's about 3 sisters. They've always kind of been strange. They disappeared from a street in Scotland when they were little to appear a month later, and all had a little crescent moon scar in the exact same place by the base of their throat. So years later, the youngest sister is just trying to get rid of the weirdness, because weirdness seems to follow them, and she's just trying to avoid it as much as she can. Then their oldest sister goes missing, so her and the middle sister, their oldest sister, his name is Gray, sorry. So her, Iris, oh my god, I didn't say any names. Iris is the youngest, Vivi is the middle, and Gray is the oldest. So Gray went missing, so Iris and Vivi are looking for her. So she goes missing kind of under suspicious circumstances, so they're looking for her. There is a horned shadow man following them. A corpse falls out of her sister's ceiling, and then memories from the night they disappeared sort of start to come back into play, and they realize they're gonna have to face like what happened to them all these years ago to figure out what happened to their sister. I loved this. The ending was so satisfying. I thought it was great, especially for YA. Like, it was creepy, it was thrilling. I really liked it. Highly recommend for a like a horror thriller. I thought it was great. Next book that I read was The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This is a Halloween themed romance. It was very cute, just like quirky themed romance. It's about a girl who accidentally puts a hex on her shitty ex-boyfriend after he breaks her heart, and then he goes back to the town 9 years later and the hex actually took effect, so all these bad things keep happening. So they're in kind of a race against time to break the hex, and obviously seeing each other again, maybe some feelings come back into play. It was super cute, Halloween themed romance. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was another one of my favorites of the year, and that is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. So in a boarded up house at the end of a dead-end street, there lives a family of 3, a teenage girl who's not allowed outside because of what happened last time, a man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memories, and a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible. So an unspeakable secret binds them all together, and then when a new neighbor moves in next door, what's kind of buried beneath might come back to haunt them all. Definitely big psychological thriller vibes. I thought this was phenomenal. I literally didn't know what was going on for the majority of this book, but in a good way, until the very end when everything wrapped up. I thought it was great. It's really told kind of like a puzzle where you're not gonna figure it out until the very last piece is put in and you can see the big picture. Yeah, 5 out of 5 stars for The Last House on Needless Street. Next was another reread for me, and that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. As we know, this is one of my favorite books. Not really going to talk about it. 5 out of 5 stars. Enemies to Lovers. Still looking for my Redford Morgan. Just as good as the first time that I read it. I love it so much. The next book, I think, was my favorite of the year and is now one of my all-time favorite books. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Okay, I annotated the shit out of this one. When I tell you I was clutching this to my chest when I finished this book and sobbing uncontrollably when I finished this book, I was. This is another V.E. Schwab, just fantastic. France, 1714. In a moment of desperation, a young woman makes a bargain to live forever, but is cursed to be forgotten by everyone she ever meets. So then begins the extraordinary life of Addie LaRue. A story that plays out across centuries and continents in history and art. She kind of learns how and if she can leave her mark on the world. So everything changes about 300 years later when Addie meets a boy in a little bookshop who sees her and remembers her. I have not read a book that has hit me this hard ever, I don't think. I don't think I've ever read a book that has impacted me as much as Addie LaRue has. Yeah, it was just incredible. The story was phenomenal. It did... Okay, so I started reading this and then I put it down because I couldn't get into it, and then I picked it back up again a couple months later. Boy, am I happy I did. In the beginning, I thought it was a little bit slow, but then almost at the halfway mark, like, I really had to get over that hump. I could not put it down, and I'm so happy that I didn't because it's now one of my favorite books. It's incredible. Everybody read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. 100 years from now, when they talk about classics, they are going to talk about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I guarantee it. Okay, so going from a fantastic, amazing 5-star to a hot mess express, which is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Okay, so I really like Stephanie Garber, and the Caraval series is one of my favorite YA fantasy series, and this was messy. This was messy. Too much going on. I didn't really know what was happening. If you're planning on reading Caraval, don't read this because there is spoilers for that series in this book, but it's about different characters. Anyways, so our main character, Evangeline Fox, makes a deal with the Prince of Hearts to stop a wedding that she doesn't want to happen, but obviously making a deal with a fate is going to come with consequences. Magic in this book, cool. Prophecy, cool. Jax, like our villain that we love, cool. Vampires? I just don't really know why that happened. Like, that was just strange. This just wasn't for me. Admittedly, I probably will read the second one now that the big weird info dump of the first one is over. I feel like maybe we have hope for the second one. But yeah, this was not the best. Not the best. Next book that I read was something very different for me. It was my first manga collection, and that was Shiver by Junji Ito. This is 9 short stories, 9 of his best work. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. My favorites were Used Record, Hanging Blimp and The Long Dream. I actually really liked The Long Dream. That one was super cool. This made me uncomfortable. The visuals in this, there was one and I literally almost threw up, not even joking. I literally almost puked. The visuals in this are uncomfy, but I think that's the point, so achieved. Yeah, this was my first manga collection. Honestly, don't know if I will read any other manga. I just don't know if that's for me, but this was pretty good. Another horror book, which was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. So this book follows 4 American Indian men after a disturbing event from their youth puts them in a desperate struggle for their lives. So they're being tracked by this entity that's like bent on revenge, and it kind of goes through each boy's story. I really enjoyed the ending. I talked to one of my best friends and she was the opposite. Didn't like the ending, really liked the beginning. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Don't have anything super great to say it. Don't have anything super bad to say about it. Yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. We have like 10 books left. I don't think the camera's gonna last 10 books, but we're gonna try. Next book that I read was Verity by Colleen Hoover. Mrs. Hoover redeemed herself a little bit with this one. She really did. She really redeemed herself a little bit. So Lowen, our main character, is a struggling writer on the brink of financial ruin. She accepts a job offer of a lifetime. Jeremy Crawford, who's the husband of a best-selling author, her name is Verity Crawford, has hired Lowen to complete the remaining books in his wife's very successful series because she is injured and can't write herself. So Lowen goes to their house, and while she's looking through the notes on Verity's book, she comes across this autobiography that Verity has written. So she starts reading it, and there's a lot of very chilling, very disturbing admissions in this manuscript. So she keeps it for herself, doesn't tell Jeremy, doesn't show him, but the more she reads, the more she kind of realizes that she could use it to her benefit because Lowen is developing feelings for Jeremy. This book was fucked up. Like, there was some fucked up shit that happened in this book. So definitely check the trigger warnings if you are going to read this one. I thought it was great though. Like, it was super exciting. I read this one in one sitting, could not put it down. Yeah, it was a wild ride. 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, we had to take a small break because the camera died, but we are back. Okay, so the next book that I read was Credence by Penelope Douglas, and I don't think that I will ever read a Penelope Douglas book again. So this book is about a girl whose parents are very famous and they actually end up committing a dual suicide. Their daughter, who is 17, she gets left to the care of her father's adopted brother. I think it was his adopted brother, who is her uncle, who lives in the mountains in Colorado. So she decides that she's gonna step out of the limelight and go to Colorado to live with her uncle, who she's never even met, and his 2 sons, who are in their early 20s. So she goes there and they're like, oh, okay, great, like, you're gonna be here, but just know when it snows, like, there's no ways to get off the mountain, so it's just gonna be the 4 of us up here. Which, like, okay. Yeah, and it was just very strange, and like, it's an adult romance, but these 3 grown men are obsessed with this 17-year-old girl, and it just was really weird. And like, you're also her uncle and cousins. Like, it's giving incest, it's giving grooming, it's giving predators. It's not for me. I mean, Penelope Douglas can write a steamy scene, which is great, but getting past the fact that this is like with a 17-year-old child, not for me. Very strange vibes. Very strange vibes. Moving on. Okay, so the next book that I read was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I actually listened to the audiobook for this one. I tried to read the physical book last year and I just couldn't get into it. I don't know, I just didn't really like the way that it was written. But I did enjoy the audiobook. So it's about our main character, Kaya, who has grown up in the marsh and she's kind of been left to fend for herself. So she's lived there her entire life, kind of secluded and on her own. She doesn't really have anybody. And then when this popular guy named Chase Andrews, he's found dead, everyone kind of flames her because they had been seen together a couple times. Anyways, yeah, this is an extremely popular book. If you haven't heard about this book, then like, I don't know, you must be living under a rock, because this is the book club mom book, and I did enjoy this book, but definitely not as much as the book club moms. Like, no shade, no tea, but you know. Yeah, I didn't absolutely love it. I didn't absolutely hate it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was good. I definitely liked the audiobook more than I liked the physical book. I actually ended up returning the physical book because I was like, I'm never gonna read this. But yeah, it was interesting to see like Kaya and her growing up and everything that she kind of went through, and her resilience, and like staying true to herself was really, really nice. And I loved a couple of the characters like Jumpin and Tate. I absolutely loved them. Yeah, so it was good. It was a good little like mediocre read, I guess. 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was the second book in the Villains duology, which is Vengeful. So this is the sequel to Vicious, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. I love this world and these characters. There's a couple new characters introduced in this book. Not really going to say anything about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but seriously, do yourself a favor and read this duology because it's fantastic. I also ended up reading the graphic novel. It's called Extraordinary. So there's a couple other characters in this one, and it's just like a graphic novel that kind of goes along with it. So there is that. Okay, next book that I read, it was also one that I got from the library, and that was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is a middle grade fantasy book. I don't really read middle grade, and this was fantastic. It was so good. It was so cute. I loved it. So this is about Amari. She's felt really lost since the disappearance of her brother, but when she discovers a strange suitcase in his room, she has no idea how much bigger his disappearance and the world around her really are. Enter in the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, where Amari begins to train as a junior agent in the world. Where like aliens, witches, and dragons and all of this stuff exists. So it's in an attempt to find her brother and figure out what happened to him. Like I said, I don't read a lot of middle grade, but this was so good. I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters. It actually is the beginning of a new fantasy series. The second one comes out in February, I think, and I'm really excited to read it because I really, really liked it. It's a great start to the series, and I think it's promising for what's to come in the series, and it's a great read for the kiddos. So if you have anyone like 9 to 12-ish age, I mean, I'm old and I really liked it, so anyone can read it, but if you have young kids or know of younger people that want to get into like sort of fantasy, this is definitely a great one. Okay, next I read The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante. Waste of my time. I'm really not even going to talk about it. I gave it a 1 star. I read it because I wanted to watch the movie. I didn't like it. It's about a middle-aged woman who steals a doll from a little girl on a beach. Like, I don't know. I know there's definitely some underlying themes, but I did not like this book. Not for me. Okay, next book. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. I read The Shining by Stephen King in an attempt to like Stephen King. I still don't really like Stephen King. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I don't know, I just didn't really like it. I liked the ending. I don't know, I didn't really like the characters. I didn't connect to any of them. I didn't really like the story, didn't find it scary. I think that for his time, Stephen King was great and his stories were great. Don't fight me on this, but yeah, I don't know, just for right now, I didn't really like it, and I didn't know anything about it. I had never watched the movie, obviously never read the book, didn't know really what it was about, so going into it, I pretty much went in with a clean slate, but yeah, it just wasn't for me. Okay, so the next book that I read was Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, the second book in the From Blood and Ash series. I loved this book. Loved it. This one, again, took me a little bit to get through because it is hefty. But that ending, though, holy, like, I don't have words. I'm not going to say a lot about it, obviously, because I don't want to spoil anything, but this is just a continuation on of that story. Definitely liked this one better than the first one. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The ending was honestly iconic. Like, it was so good. Okay, next one I read was an audiobook, and I read The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski, and it's the prequel to the Witcher series. It's like the introduction to The Witcher, and I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I want to read the Witcher series, but I was like, I don't want to read or buy them all if I'm not gonna like them, so I started with the audiobook of the prequel, and I loved it. I thought it was great. 4 out of 5 stars. It's just a collection of short stories on The Witcher and like cases that he takes on. So it's about Geralt the Witcher, who he targets like monsters and like vile creatures that are attacking the lands, and he gets rid of them. Yeah, 4 to 5 stars. I loved it. I'm definitely going to continue on with the series. This next one is also another one of my favorites of the year, and that is The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. I devoured this book. What to even say? 5 to 5 stars, obviously. So this is about our main character, 17-year-old Kiva, who has spent the last 10 years in a notorious death prison. She is tasked as being the healer there. A rebel queen is captured, and she's really ill when she gets there, and Kiva, being the healer, has to take care of her. The queen is sentenced to take on the trial by ordeal, which is a set of 4 elemental challenges that she has to complete in order to kind of gain her innocence and her freedom. Nobody has ever survived the trial by ordeal, and the queen is too ill to participate, but Kiva ends up getting a message from her family that says, "Keep her alive, we're coming." So she ends up taking on the challenges herself and partakes in them on behalf of the queen. And all the while there's a stomach virus going through the prison that's killing a lot of inmates, so Kiva's trying to figure out what that is, all the while trying not to fall for this new inmate who came in. This was a fantastic YA fantasy. I loved it. I can't wait to read the rest of the series. It was super fast-paced, super action-packed. I could not put it down. I cannot recommend this enough. 5 of 5 stars. So the last book that I read this year was The Island of Missing Trees by Eilish Shafak. I really wanted to like this book. And it's not that I didn't like it, because I did, but I really wanted to, love it. I thought I was absolutely going to adore it, but I didn't. It landed just right in the middle for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So it's about 2 teenagers, a Greek Cypriot and a Turkish Cypriot. They meet in a taverna on the island that they both call home, and a fig tree stretches through a cavity in the roof, and it bears witness to their silent comings and goings, because they it's like a forbidden love. Decades later, Kostas, the main male character, returns to the island because he's a botanist and he's looking for native species, but really he's looking for his lost love. So it just talks about the story of their love. And then in present day London, they have a daughter, and it's about her as well. I really wanted to love this book. There is a narrative of the fig tree, which I feel like was overpowering, and why I didn't like it as much as I feel like I would have if the fig tree narrative wasn't so prominent. But yeah, the descriptions of food in this book were amazing. It made me incredibly hungry. Also the descriptions of where they were, in the taverna and on the beach, and just walking around in Cyprus, it just made me want to be there, and I felt like I was there. But yeah, I just felt like the fig tree narrative was a little overpowering, but it's talking about the connection between humans and nature is a lot bigger than we think it is. It was a beautiful story. I just had bigger expectations for it. So 3 out of 5 stars. And that's it. 57 books. Super proud of myself for surpassing my goal. If you stayed until the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I know it was a little chaotic. Definitely thankful that I had my notes, or else it would have been even worse. That's it. That's everything I read. Here's to 2022 and another year filled with amazing stories. Happy reading.